They canceled the vote. They moved the vote. Well, they delayed it so that they could have this hearing with Christine Ballsy Ford and Kavanaugh. And she hadn't even accepted the invitation to show up. And now her lawyer is saying it's not her job to corroborate her story. She's not the one that has to corroborate her story. No. She's making the allegation. So she doesn't have to corroborate anything. It needs to be investigated. This is no different than Harry Reid saying, I have a friend that told me that Mitt Romney hadn't paid his taxes in 10 years. And the media says to Harry Reid, what's your evidence? And Harry says, don't ask me. You need to go talk to Romney. Romney's the guy who hadn't paid his taxes in 10 years. And the media said, oh, yeah, okay. So they all ran off and started badgering Romney about why he hadn't paid his taxes in 10 years. This is exactly what this is. So the woman who doesn't say a word about this for Brett Kavanaugh's entire professional career, at various confirmation hearings for the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, for everything else that he's done working in the Bush White House, this woman has had a word to say, not a thing to say. And then after every Democrat effort to exhaust, or they've exhausted every effort to keep him off the Supreme Court, this thing shows up with Dianne Feinstein saying, oh, look what I just remembered I have here. You know, I got this in July, and I just now remembered it. And now everybody's saying, oh, my God. Oh, geez, look what Kavanaugh did. And they're just accepting it because, once again, it is not the nature of the evidence. It's the seriousness of the charge. And I am not making this up. This lawyer, who, by the way, Katz is her name. She is a Democrat activist. She is plainly saying it's not her job to corroborate her story. Her efforts, her legal efforts, are funded by George Soros. There is no doubt what this is. We've been here before. How in the world can you say that the accuser doesn't have to corroborate anything? Deborah Katz, the attorney for the woman accusing Kavanaugh of sexual assault, said that it's not her client's job to corroborate her claims. Katz said on CNN yesterday the investigators should be responsible for proving Christine Ballsy Ford's claim that Kavanaugh held her down and what? Drunkenly groped her while at a party in Haskell. So she can make this claim. She doesn't have to prove it. She doesn't have to have any evidence. The investigators have to track it down and prove it. But now the Democrats are saying, wait a minute. We shouldn't be investigating like Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris said, we shouldn't be investigating this. The FBI should. You know, this woman, Kamala Harris, these people are so dense. Does she not know the FBI does not investigate these kinds of crimes? The FBI does not investigate local crimes, high school drunken party crimes. The FBI doesn't investigate those. But then again, that's not what this is about. This is about delaying everything so that Kavanaugh doesn't get on the court, and the Republicans are playing right along with this. We've been here before, folks. We have been here. Yesterday on this program, I recited and I shared with you how livid I was back in 1991 when this Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill thing was going on. And I made mention of this because I'm feeling the identical sense of anger and outrage now. But there are substantial differences. In 1991, CNN was the only cable news network, and this show and some other local conservative radio talk shows which had begun to spring up were it. There was no blogosphere, there was no Fox News, there was nothing. This show and other related local radio talk shows were it in terms of conservative opposition. And when I was talking about how angry I felt yesterday, it triggered something in Cookies. My Cookie controls the archive of audio sound bites of this program. Not just sound bites we've used, but actual sound bites of me. And it triggered something. She went back to our archives and she found in 1991 in October an appearance I made on Charlie Rose. It was after this show, by the way. I've never been invited back by Charlie Rose and PBS. Not that I'm quite right whining about, not. I'm just historical fact. I want to play these sound bites for you because what they show is we've been here before. It is the same exact playbook. It is the identical thing. Back in 1991, I had to go on TV to refute these clowns. Don't have to do that now. But back then I did. I was so livid, I can't tell you. And I didn't know Clarence Thomas, but I knew. I knew what this was. I knew this was not about sexual harassment in Anita Hill. This was about denying Clarence Thomas a seat on the United States Supreme Court. One of the most easy, instinctive things I have ever done is defend Clarence Thomas. I had people saying to me at the time, Rush, you're really way out there. You don't know the guy. I don't care. I do know the guy. I know plenty of people who know him. I've seen him talk. I know my instincts on this. This is a fine, decent man. I know he's being railroaded. I know this is a typical left-wing trick. I had no doubt then. I've got no doubt now. Let's go back. I just want to share this with you. For the purposes of demonstrating to people that this is just another page from the playbook, that we've been here before, and that there's nothing even really unique about this in terms of Democrat strategy. So it's October 15th, 1991. Charlie Rose Show on PBS. The one with everything, the background is black. It aired at 11 o'clock at night live on PBS back then. He had me on, and the executive director of the New York Urban League, whose name was Harriet Michelle. And we're talking about Thomas's confirmation to Supreme Court. Charlie Rose started by saying, what should the Senate Judiciary Committee have done? If somebody comes to their attention and raises the issue of sexual harassment, what should the committee have done?
The thing that has to be done is that the American system of jurisprudence has to be kept in focus. I kept hearing people talk about the seriousness of these charges. Seriousness of the charges is irrelevant. The nature of the evidence is what's relevant. The presumption of innocence is always with the accused. And just because someone comes forth at the last moment and claims that something happened, her accusation cannot be regarded as evidence. And if there's nothing to corroborate it, there is no way, just because she charges it, any weight should be given.
It's evidence, but it doesn't have corroboration.
Well, it's not evidence. No, it's not. An accusation is not evidence. It cannot be evidence.
It can't be. An allegation is never evidence. It cannot be evidence. And notice, back then they didn't care. It was evidence. It was the seriousness of the charge. They didn't care about it being corroborated, just like today. Her lawyer is, it's not her job to corroborate the charge. The charge is enough. The allegation is enough. When we say it, that's what happened. That's their cocked, certain, arrogant attitude. When we say it, it happened. And it's up to investigators to prove it didn't. Why hasn't the woman come forward before now? Why has she not accepted the invitation to come back? F. Chuck Todd's out there saying, do you people who think that a woman of her age would destroy her life by coming forward like Christine Ballsy Ford is now, you don't understand left-wing. What do you mean destroy her life? Has Anita Hill's life been destroyed, or has she become a hero? Anita Hill's become a hero, and they still make books about her. They take something that didn't happen, they make it look like it did happen, and they make her a hero victim. They're now trying to say that Anita Hill was actually at the forefront of the Me Too movement. There has yet to be a shred of evidence that Clarence Thomas did what he was alleged to have done, and yet look what they've done with it. And they're in the process of doing the same thing to Kavanaugh. And I'm afraid we don't have an Arlen Specter this year. Oh, in fact, if you have forgotten, I got 3 more of these Charlie Rose sound bites. Hang on. Arlen Specter, back in 1991, just took it to Anita Hill. He just, illegally, I don't mean in an unfair way, he just destroyed her as a witness. And I think it had such a profound impact on him. It's one of the reasons why he became a Democrat much later on in life. I heard somebody say on Fox that that couldn't happen today. Oh, it was last night. Somebody on Fox was saying, yeah, there could not be the kind of interrogation of Anita Hill by Arlen Specter in this Me Too movement. See? So a woman makes an allegation, and we cannot probe her as though she is a human being. Arlen Specter ripped Anita Hill apart, demonstrated that a lot of this could not be backed up, had no evidence, and he got creamed for it. Don't misunderstand. But the idea that today we couldn't do that, like if this woman were to show up and be interrogated or questioned, we couldn't do to her what Arlen Specter did to Anita Hill, which means because of the Me Too movement, we pretty much have to go with whatever a woman who claims to have been abused says. We can't investigate too much. We can't probe too much because that then is potentially harming psychologically the victim and all this. And all of this is part of the plan, too. All of to soften any attempt to get to the truth of these things has been long part of the strategy. Let me go back to the Charlie Rose sound bites. After that bite where I made it plain to Charlie Rose that an allegation is not evidence because it doesn't have corroboration, and Charlie said, well, it is evidence, it just didn't have corroboration. No, it is not evidence. It cannot be evidence.
I think that what's happened here is that liberals fear the democratic process because the people vote against liberal things. Liberals cannot win the White House. When the referendum is conservatism versus liberalism, liberalism loses in landslides. The Supreme Court is the most important political branch of government to liberals. That is where all of liberalism has found its way into our society, and they've lost it now, and they feel they have no recourse. It's sheer panic out there, I think, Charlie, and I don't exaggerate here. I think that they are palpably worried that they now no longer have a route to the mainstream of society.
All right, and this kept going. The next soundbite here is, let's see, what is, I asked Harriet Michelle of the New York Urban League if she believed Anita Hill.
You believe her?
Do I believe her?
Why
yes,
do you
I
believe her?
believe
Can
her.
I ask you why you believe her? She offered no evidence, Harriet.
Well,
there was
I
no...
believe
Okay,
her.
let her, you asked the
believe-
question. Let her
That's
answer.
exactly right. I believe that for everybody to make this assumption that Clarence Thomas, the public persona, cannot possibly, under any circumstances in a room one-on-one with a female, be gross and be obnoxious, is out of their mind.
Whoa, wait a minute. What's dangerous is assuming he did it with no evidence.
I don't assume that he did it.
If
but
you
I
believe her, you have
I
to.
believe that it is possible that he did it, and I believe that four
So we convict
lawyers
him on
coming
that?
forward.
We convict
This
him on the
wasn't a
possibility?
trial, though. And the fact
Oh,
that the
but it was.
possibility, I happen to believe there is a cloud that follows him.
Because
I happen
what?
to believe
Because-
it because I don't think, I
He
think
wants
that
her
she
to
was
be-
a credible.
I think you
no,
want
I
there to be
think
a cloud.
I
That's what this
think
is all about.
No evidence, no reason to believe her. She just chooses to believe it. It's where we are, exactly where we are here, with the same kind of thinking, the same kind of, well, there's no reasoning going on here. This is pure politics. None of these people know this woman, I don't think. You know, before this is all over, we might find out that this woman's family has something to do with Perkins Coie, who had something to do with the Steele dossier. I mean, anything is possible with this group of people. Would you be surprised if this woman was found to have roots by virtue of people she's known to the Steele dossier and to the effort to keep Trump, get Trump kicked out? Would you be surprised if after all this shakes out, we found out this woman is actually a resistance activist? I'm not saying so. Although, if I wanted to be like a liberal, I could make the allegation right here. I don't have any evidence, but I could start making the claim this woman is a left-wing activist. She's got ties to the Steele dossier. She's part of the effort to get rid of Donald Trump and has been from day one. You can't say that. Why? Because you don't know it to be true. Well, you don't know what she's saying is true either, but you're choosing to believe her. It's a one-way street with this stuff. So here's Harriet Michelle, who doesn't know Clarence Thomas, and look at what she said. There was a lot of talk back there. But she said, I believe that for everybody to make this assumption that Clarence Thomas cannot possibly, under any circumstances in a room, one-on-one with a female, be gross and be obnoxious out of their mind, meaning you'd be crazy to assume the guy has any morals. You would be crazy to assume that Clarence Thomas behaves himself. In her world, it's totally reasonable to think that Clarence Thomas would force himself on women, one-on-one in a room. That's what she's running around claiming she believes. Is it any different today? And here is the final soundbite, and this is basically Charlie Rose and Harriet Michelle, and I think just listen to this; it'll be self-explanatory.
Don't you think that some men were motivated by the fact that if this woman's charge had prevented Clarence Thomas from going on the Supreme Court, that would then, a lot of men interpret that as perhaps encouraging some other women to come forward and make similar charges? Don't you think if they could get him there and settle this, that means that they're not as vulnerable, they didn't feel as vulnerable themselves about similar charges?
Let me disagree with that. I think, Harriet, that this, at least, among other things, has raised a consciousness on sexual harassment, and therefore it's not so much men getting behind them, but it raised the consciousness. And I suspect that there's a different kind of conversation taking place in the workplace in America as a result of this.
Yeah, right. Of course it was. And that's Charlie Rose out there saying that this will change the way men view sexual harassment. It didn't change the way Charlie viewed it. I think CBS had to get rid of him, right? CBS is trying to erase any awareness that Charlie Rose ever worked there. They're getting rid of all the pictures of him in the lobby and all of that. Yeah, here he was carrying the water for the left back in the Clarence Thomas days. So you see, my friends, we've been here and done that. There isn't anything new except the players are different and the race is different. Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill were both African-American. Kavanaugh, Christine Ballsy Ford, both white privilege. Back after this. Soundbites of me on Charlie Rose 27 years ago, folks. 27 years. And you'll notice that what I believed and stated back then is identical to today. Rock solid, because my core is my core. My core beliefs are not calculated daily or weekly or monthly or annually. They are what they are. You'll also notice that nothing changes with the left. It's the same things that motivate them and animate them, and it's the same strategies and tactics that they use. Now, I don't know. I've pointed this out to you frequently when it happens. There's a new phenomenon happening in American journalism. And I say new, it's new to Donald Trump. Trump will tweet something. Trump will say something, either at a rally or in the Oval Office. When the AP, Reuters, New York Times, Washington Post report it, they all say President Trump, without evidence, said whatever he said. President Trump said without evidence. This is meant to cast doubt and aspersions on what Trump is saying, to make readers believe that Trump is lying. Well, why isn't that part of this story? Christine Ballsy Ford, without evidence, says that Judge Kavanaugh did whatever she says he did back when they were a couple of drunkards in high school. You'll notice it's very selective. Donald Trump, without evidence, claimed, blah, 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 blah. Donald Trump, without evidence today, said that Hispanic unemployment is at an all-time record low. Didn't need evidence, but he did have it. Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers. But we do not see Christine Ballsy Ford without evidence. No, it's just exact opposite. Christine Ballsy Ford, and whatever she says, you must believe it. You must believe it. It's not up to her to corroborate anything. How the hell can that be, by the way? If the government or anybody comes after you, you end up in court, you realize who has to prove it. The people accusing you. It is not up to you to prove your innocence. Now, many times, depending on juries and so forth, that's what defense lawyers seek to do, find an alternative explanation. But it's the government's job, the prosecutors, the accusers, to prove. But how does she get an exemption? How does Christine Ballsy Ford get an exemption from having to prove her claim? Well, because she's a Democrat and a leftist, and that's just the way the world works for us. We don't have to prove anything. We're liberals, and the way we do and think is the natural order of things, and you just better accept it or else. We don't have to prove anything, especially to you, conservative skunks. Screw you. That's their attitude. And in the process, look what they're doing to the rule of law. In addition to everything else, they're ripping apart. Now it's up to 200 former female classmates of Kavanaugh now signed the letter praising his character. How many of you guys know 200 women, period? Much less 200 that would swear by the fact that you're a nice guy, that you are morally fit. How many of you know 200 women that would say that about you? No. I'm not saying I don't believe it. I'm saying it's astounding. I do believe it. I absolutely do believe it. That's the point. Did you see the Emmys for last night? Anybody watch them? The ratings for the Emmys crashed, apparently to a new all-time record low, which to me is curious because honestly, folks, we are in the golden age of television. Television, depending on your moral code, but the creativity, the content has never been better. There is more television today, good TV, more options. Remember when we were growing up, there were 3 networks and that was it? I don't mean to be harping on that. And then it wasn't that long ago. If you go back just 10 years, 12 years ago, it was still largely network TV, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox. And those successful shows, those producers had to come up with 21 to 24 episodes a season. It was a marathon. They never got any time off. Even when the season ended, they got a couple weeks break and they'd start writing the next. I'm not commenting on whether you like the shows or not. I'm talking that the output was phenomenal. Now the trend in television, and anybody working in television will tell you that there's no better time than now. You know what you mean? I don't have to produce 24, 21 episodes. All I got to do is produce 8 or 10, maybe 13 at the most. A year instead of 24. You've got people getting into TV now, and they're producing some of the, well, without making a judgment on it, the number of people paying to watch Netflix and Amazon Prime Video and everything else is through the roof. My point is, a lot of people are spending a lot of time loving watching television. So why wouldn't an award show where it's going to be announced which of these programs stars and producers, directors, writers, and the shows themselves are the best? The two usually go hand in hand. But there was absolutely no desire to watch the Emmys last night. And by the way, we're through with summertime. I mean, we're now middle of September. Everybody's going to schools, back to school. Families have resumed their normalcy. The sun's going down a little bit earlier. You know, you're not during summertime, late afternoon outside activities. I find it curious. And the content, by the way, yeah, of course, the content last night was juvenile and of course nothing but never Trump and so forth. I'm kind of asking the question rhetorically, but still to make the point. In the eyes of many, television, you've never had more options. It's never been more plentiful. The quality on balance has never been better. A lot of eyeballs watching television in a lot of different ways. Watching on their phones, watching on iPads, regular TV screens. More people than ever. And yet, when it came time to announce the awards for all this great stuff, nobody cared. Speaking of great video and all of this, you want to do something great for your family this fall? You can do it with Legacy Box. Legacy Box are the people to work with to transfer and digitize all of those old family videos and movies that you have from decades ago that have stockpiled over the years. You can't watch them anymore because they're in formats that nobody has. You've got Super 8 films or slides that you used to put a projector, or you've got VHS or Betamax. Nobody has those players anymore. You probably kept the cassettes and the film just because you did, because you probably all this time think about finding a way to watch it again. Well, now that way has been made available, and it's so easy, and it is the best. Your best family memories can be relived. They can be rebirthed, enjoyed again. You can digitize them, meaning have all that old Super 8 film or VHS, Betamax, video cassette, even still photos, still photography. Have it all put on a DVD or a thumb drive. That's what Legacy Box does. They've done it now for some 400,000 families. They've got a really impressive setup in Tennessee, and maybe the world's largest collection of functioning VCRs and film projectors. Those devices are connected to computers doing the digital transferring, and they do it at high speed, maintaining the best quality. It's convenient. You just call them up, send them a note at legacybox.com/rush, and they'll send you the box. It's shielded so that no magnetic waves, X-rays, or anything else get in there, damage your data. You send it off to them. They digitize it, put it on a DVD or thumb drives, and send it back to you. It takes about 2 weeks. And once you get it, you can copy it, you can duplicate it, you can organize it, and most importantly, you can look at it easily on modern-day formats. Go online to legacybox.com/rush. That's legacybox.com/rush. You save 40% today on the plan you choose with that address. legacybox.com/rush. Your host, once again, savagely attacked on television last night, CNN International's newsroom. They were talking about the allegations against Judge Kavanaugh. The anchor, John Voss, was talking to Democrat strategist Caroline Heldman.
Here's how Rush Limbaugh put it on Monday on his Talkback radio show.
If this woman did not want this taken any farther, then the Democrats are betraying her. And I don't believe the Democrats are betraying her. I think she is part of a cabal doing everything they can to stop Kavanaugh, or if they can't stop him, to cast such a cloud.
What's the likelihood that she made it all up?
The likelihood that she made it up, according to the FBI, general statistics is 2 to 8%. But in her particular case, she's taken a lie detector test. And of the 65 women who came forward to support Brett Kavanaugh, when Politico went to speak with him, only 2 of them still backed up their claim that he was a good guy. If somebody murders somebody, you can find 100 people to say that person's a good guy.
That is not true. That is not what happened. Here we go again. Okay, so this is Caroline Heldman, and she is a Democrat strategist. And note the way she says that we can trust the allegations. Well, the likelihood that she made it up, according to FBI statistics, 2 to 8%. So there's a 98 to 92% chance that she's telling the truth. And that's all we on the left need. FBI statistics. And then she launches in, she took a lie detector test. Yeah, given to her by her lawyer, who's funded and paid for by George Soros. And then the 65 women who came forward to support Kavanaugh, when Politico went to speak with them, only 2 of them backed up their... That's not true. Only 2 of them wanted to go public. None of them withdrew their claims about Kavanaugh being upright, a decent guy. None of them changed their minds. They just didn't want to go public because they don't want to be part of the circus. 2 of them did. And they appeared last night on the Fox News channel. So they're just outright lying here about the statistics and the degree to which the accuser may be telling the truth, and making up things about the women that supporting Kavanaugh kind of peeling off now. That number is not 65, it's 200. There's a scholar at the Hoover Institution, which is part of the Stanford campus out in Palo Alto, Richard Epstein, and he's a brilliant guy, and he's written about this. I want to give you some excerpts of what he has said about this, because I'm sure this is one of those things when you read it, when you hear it, you're going to be, yeah, wish I had said that. This last-ditch decision to sabotage Kavanaugh at the 11th hour is a disgusting piece of political propaganda. By the way, I'm leaving parts out where he says she's to be believed and we give her benefit of the doubt. He's been totally open and fair-minded about her. But now he gets into the tactics. Christine Blasey Ford behaved wholly improperly when she decided to write a letter only to a Democrat lawmaker in which she made the most serious allegations of sexual assault against Kavanaugh. At the very least, she ought to have handled matters wholly differently. If she wanted to keep matters confidential, she should have sent that letter to President Trump and to Senator Grassley. She also should have sent it to the FBI for investigation. And she should have done all of these things at the earliest possible moment in time for a principled and neutral examination to take place before the Senate hearings took place. And then she should have sat for a cross-examination. Well, he's exactly right. She didn't do any of this. Putting the information exclusively in the hands of key Democrats thus invited this wholly corrupt strategy that has now unfolded. First, the Democrats would try to discredit Kavanaugh by engaging in a set of procedural antics and obnoxious substantive questions during the hearing without mentioning his letter. When that strategy abjectly failed, they knew they had to go to Plan B, which was to release the letter and the allegation days before the confirmation vote. A perfect sandbag, for the Democrats knew full well that there was no time to respond to them without causing an enormous delay in the confirmation hearings. Their hope was, and is, to create a huge media circus that would take weeks, if not months, to sort out, shipwreck this nomination, wave goodbye to Kavanaugh, make it impossible for the current Senate to pass on any subsequent nominee before January, and then take control of the Senate, create a stalemate that could run on until the next presidential election. And for what? Christine Ballsy Ford, a Kavanaugh accuser, maintained a stony silence on these allegations for more than 35 years. At no point did she raise them in connection with the Senate confirmation hearings before Kavanaugh was confirmed in 2006. Kavanaugh has categorically denied the allegations. Late last week, Mark Judge, his alleged accomplice, denounced the allegations as absolutely nuts. No other woman has ever made any allegation of this sort against Kavanaugh, and 65 other women, now 200, by the way, have written an explicit letter in his defense. Kavanaugh is right not to respond behind his categorical denial, knowing full well that further comment would only draw him further into a vortex on which credibility determinations would be unending. The Senate should proceed with this confirmation vote. They should do it Thursday, especially if they do not have an acknowledgement from Christine Ford that she's even going to show up for this so-called hearing on Monday. Now Chuck Schumer, the Democrats, are saying, wait a minute. You can't just do a hearing with her and Kavanaugh. We need all kinds of witnesses. We need Mark Judge in there. We need all kinds of witnesses. You can't just have her and him in there. Well, wait a minute. I thought that's what everybody wanted at first. We're going to have her in there and then him in there, and then we're going to make a decision who's telling the truth, right? You realize what a circus that's going to be Monday? If this were to actually happen, do you realize how many Code Pink people a Democrat senator is going to let in? What kind of an abject, humiliating, embarrassing for the country circus do the Democrats have planned if this hearing on Monday actually happens? This is an abomination, what they're doing. Destroying the life and career of a great American, sullying and erasing the basic tenets of the United States Constitution. It pains me that more average Americans are not livid about this, outraged at this, and ready to punish Democrats like they've never been punished at the ballot box in November. We'll be back. The FBI keeps statistics on rape. I'm asking because I didn't know they investigated that crime. But where does that come from? 2% of what is it? 2% of only 2% lie. Only 2% of women lie. I think that stat is from that Susan Brownmiller book. Brownmiller, she wrote the definitive book on rape. So it's not about sex, it's about power and violence. Forget the name of the book, but I don't think that's an FBI stat. Anyway, this Democrat strategist cited on CNN International last night. Okay, let's hit the phones. We have Faith from Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri with us. Great to have you up first today, so welcome.
Well, hi.
Hi.
I'm very nervous. Always wanted to talk to you. So, I was calling in because this whole thing really has me so up in arms because it's a mockery of all women, number one. And
how so?
That have been raped. Well, if they have been raped, they should be listened to. And when there's any doubt cast upon it, it's just making those women look silly. Well, I mean, the women like this person accusing Kavanaugh, and so people start to doubt the women who have actually been raped. I mean, that's been happening always. But
I don't think that's what's happening. I frankly...
No, I don't. No, I do not think that's what's happening. I think this is very political. You can listen to it and watch it, and you're my favorite person, so you tell me, you know, I listen to you and mostly always believe everything or agree with most of what you say. But I'm looking at this, so I come to my own conclusions, though. I'm looking at this, and there's how many women, speaking from a women's point of view, have went to a party when they're young and had a drink, even though mom said don't drink.
I was just thinking about this. How many of you went to parties and said, well, spin the bottle, and you won spin the bottle, and the girl wouldn't kiss you because she said you slobber? You know, and it hurt.
Or
I mean, all this stuff.
You and then you slandered their name.
Everybody was a teenager. I'll tell you this. This is going to come back and haunt me. But I'll tell you this. Anybody who ever came to a high school party at my house better not ever be nominated to be a judge anywhere. Because all kinds of this stuff. I mean, teenagers are teenagers. And women, the thing about this, the thing that gets me is that in this era of feminism, the left still wants to portray women as helpless, besieged, victims of predatory men. I would say feminism has totally bombed out in whatever its objective was, because now the Me Too movement is predicated on the fact that whenever a woman says this happened, by golly, by gosh, it did. And you have to accept it. Now, in that sense, maybe feminism can claim a couple scalps and some success. I got to go. We'll be back, folks. Hang on. I am Rush Limbaugh, America's real anchorman, as well as America's truth detector and a doctor of democracy. Here, emitting vocal vibrations, resonating coast to coast, on the largest talk radio network and radio program in the country. Happy to have you with us, as always. If you want to be on the program, who doesn't? It's 800-282-2882, the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to ask you a couple of questions to ponder just as human beings here. Take politics out of it as much as you can when dealing with my questions. It's impossible to totally do it, but I just want to ask, how many of you, as human beings, are capable of doing what this woman in Northern California has just done? For example, and specifically, you're minding your own business. You're living your life. You went to high school with people. You worked with people and all that. You are a renowned left-wing activist. You wear vagina hats on your head when Donald Trump was elected president. No, in fact, let's not do that. You're just an average, ordinary person. You don't do any of that, even though this woman did. My first question is, how many of you would knowingly attempt to derail the life and career of someone you peripherally knew 35 years ago? How many of you would do that? Now, I don't know what the law of averages is. I'm sure with as many people in this country, there's a lot of creeps and a lot of vindictive people. And I'm not saying it isn't possible, but how many of you would... Do you realize how often this happens with the Democrat Party and conservative judicial nominees? But how many of you would do it? You didn't know somebody well. You didn't date them. They didn't break your heart. They didn't do anything to you that you can really... I mean, you can't remember where it happened. You can't remember even specifically what happened. This person that you are actively trying to destroy has been in public life for years, and not once in any of those occasions where his name has been mentioned publicly have you done anything to try to stop or derail it. But then this man happens to become a Supreme Court nominee. How many of you would do this? How many of you would either make up a story and send a letter, which leads to my second question. My point is, decent people this is not how people act. This is not how people think. I know there's a lot of vindictiveness, and I know there are a lot of people that seek revenge, but that usually derives from knowing somebody well enough that whatever they did genuinely angered you or hurt you or harmed you. But this is peripheral. What kind of person does this? And then after doing it, doesn't want to follow it through. I'm not saying excuses made for the fact that she doesn't want to appear at the hearing that Grassley has invited her to. Well, the excuse is, I wouldn't want to appear. I wouldn't want to have to face those questions. I wouldn't have to want to face those Klieg lights. I totally understand this woman not accepting the invitation, I'm hearing people say. And just because she doesn't accept the invitation to appear doesn't mean that she's lying and making it up. Okay, so we're told by this woman's lawyer that she does not have to corroborate her allegation. It's not up to her. We have got to prove she's lying. She does not have to prove she's telling the truth. That stands justice on its head. The next thing we're being told, it's perfectly normal for an accuser to not want to be part of the process of getting rid of her accused. It's perfectly normal that she wouldn't want to appear before these senators. It's perfectly normal she wouldn't want to appear. I wouldn't, they're saying. I wouldn't want to do. Well, not only would you, how many of you would get yourselves involved in this situation in the first place? Unless you are a dyed-in-the-wool political activist. Now, my second question is a little bit more basic. Is it really this easy? Is all you have to do to derail the career of an acknowledged as great human being in justice, is all you've got to do is send a letter to Senator Dianne Feinstein? Is that it? It's that easy. We're to believe that all somebody has to do is send a letter, an anonymous letter, well, a letter requesting anonymity to Senator Dianne Feinstein, and that alone can derail the life and the reputation and the career of a decent human being. Is it really that easy? Do we want it to be that easy? Not only all you have to do is send a letter to Senator Dianne Feinstein, but that you will automatically be taken seriously and that you will automatically be believed. If that's all it takes, we could start a letter-writing campaign to Senator Feinstein today. Could we not? I mean, we're being asked to really swallow a lot here, folks. We're being asked to believe quite a bit. These kinds of things just don't happen in the real world, except when Democrats are involved and the Supreme Court's involved. And by the way, you know, there's a dance everybody's doing to avoid hitting the bullseye here. Dawn, what do you think the bullseye really is here? What do you think has the Democrats so paranoid, so frightened, so agitated, so animated, motivated to stop this guy? What is it? Well, yeah, but why? I know they don't want him in the court. It's one word, begins with an A. This is all about abortion. It is about nothing else. As far as the left is concerned, they want to be able to continue uninterrupted with their behavior when it comes to abortion. Sex without consequence, life without consequence. They are scared to death that a Republican or conservative majority is going to overturn Roe versus Wade. Now, there are other concerns, too. I mean, just the fact that being a majority conservative court isn't up. But this, and nobody's talking about it, that's how you know that that's what this is really about. They cannot allow anything to happen to Roe versus Wade, and it won't. That's what's crazy. It won't. But is it really just this easy? That's all you have to do. A letter from somebody that can't even remember where or when or for sure with who some allegation, some activity happened. That's all it takes. And how many of you would do this? My point is, this isn't normal, folks. This is not how the normal segment of the people in our country live and operate. And yet, it defines, shapes, influences the way Washington, D.C. works. And it's just another add-on as to why so many people are so fed up and disgusted. Because all it takes is a letter that Dianne Feinstein didn't even act on immediately. And then when she did announce it, she announced it because her colleagues were going to leak it. And the person that wrote the letter supposedly didn't want her name used, didn't want anything done with this. Well, then why send the letter in the first place? Do you think they have given one iota's thought to the impact this is going to have on Brett Kavanaugh's life, his wife, his two kids, all of the people with whom he comes in contact? He coaches little girls in softball and basketball or whatever. He does incredible amounts of charitable work for the needy and the homeless. Do you think they have the slightest concern over the fact that they are trying to destroy a career and a life and a future? I can tell you right now, it's not even crossed their mind, except to the extent that if that happens, it's justified because this guy's a conservative judge and he deserves to have an excrement sandwich as his life every day. That's how they look at all of this. But I mean, it really got me today when I found the woman's lawyer claiming it's not up to us to corroborate our charge. It's not. No, we don't have to corroborate anything. As I said, this is just textbook. This is Harry Reid calling the press, and I have a friend that told me that Mitt Romney hadn't paid his taxes in 10 years. And the press said, well, who's your friend? Where'd you get this? How long? And Reid got mad at him. Dingy Harry got mad. What do you mean? What are you asking me for? You need to go ask Romney why he hadn't paid his taxes in 10 years. The press said, oh, yeah, you're right. And they did. They left Harry Reid and they started chasing down Romney, wanting to know why he hadn't paid his taxes in 10 years. And all it took was somebody, a phantom, anonymous letter to Harry Reid claiming that Mitt Romney hadn't paid taxes in 10 years. When, in fact, he had. Now we've got a letter to Dianne Feinstein that arrived this past July. Nothing was done with it because the Democrats tried to kick Kavanaugh off the court using everything but it, but now it's desperation time, plan B. Okay, I got to take another brief time out. We will continue much more straight ahead right after this.
Have you downloaded Russia's?
We may have been the victims of a decades-long medical scam. Have you seen the news? No evidence that high levels of cholesterol cause heart disease, doctors claim. This doesn't surprise me at all. And how many people are out there taking statins and go and get their cholesterol tested, good and bad? Oh, look, it's high. Look at your triglyceride. Oh, my God, we got to get you on medication. To get you on medication, you start changing the way you live because you're thinking you're eating stuff that they scrape out of your arteries and your veins there when you go in and have open heart or clear out put the angioplasty in there. It turns out it may not be true. It's UK media news. Doctors have found there's no evidence of a link between high levels of bad cholesterol and heart disease, according to a study. And with this claim, a number of leading cardiologists say that statins taken by millions of Brits to tackle cholesterol don't have any benefit at all. Their findings, published in the Expert Review of Clinical Pharmacology, suggest the drugs will not treat heart disease. As they say, high bad cholesterol levels don't necessarily lead to heart disease. 17 doctors from across the world appear to have dispelled the theory that there are links between having high LDL-C levels, known as bad cholesterol, and fatty deposits that clog arteries. You know, how much of what we think we know is just BS for a host of reasons, but it seems like you know what was also dispelled yesterday? A baby aspirin a day, or when you're having a heart attack, doesn't mean anything. It won't help. It won't change anything. And in fact, taking too much aspirin could hurt your stomach lining or some such thing. But an 81 milligram aspirin tablet for heart health, according to some doctors yesterday, is a worthless placebo-type activity. Might help you psychologically, but it's not changing a thing. Now, the theory is that if you're having a heart attack or think you are, take one of those babies. It'll thin your blood a little bit to help alleviate heart attack symptoms. Now, some people came out yesterday, that's bogus. That isn't true. Think of all the things that we grew up thinking were going to kill us, which is everything. Anyway, let me get back to the phones. Don't want to lose the momentum here. David in Colleyville, Texas. Great to have you, sir. Welcome to the EIB Network.
Thank you, sir. I'm just calling about Brett Kavanaugh. I used to work for him at the White House, and something you said just about how this pains you, this is just, there's a lot of bad things that happen in politics. You know, the National Guard documents, there's a lot of things that have really upset me, but this one has just really hit hard. This is a good man. You know, I tell people he's one of those people that you just hope you'll come across, you know, once in your life, and you hope some part of them will rub off on you. And just so much of what I know about being a professional, you know, balancing work and life, treating people of all levels with respect, you know, I learned from him, and he's just, you know, a good, decent person. And
now, if you knew him in the White House, that means that was when he was staff secretary?
Yes, sir. And it was long hours, and it was stressful, but he, you know, and there were stressful days, but he never failed to just, even when no one was watching, just do the right thing, you know, treat anyone with respect. You just always knew he would do the right thing. And I can just tell you, you're not out on a limb by defending him. You know, he is, I just appreciate you being bold. You know, I don't think we have to grant that there's any merit to this. You know, I just believe that they're bearing false witness. I think this is totally wrong. It offends my sense of justice, and this is just a good man, and I just don't think he should have to go through this.
I don't either. There's not a shred of evidence of this kind of behavior or even allegation at any time, at any stage of his life. Not anything even close. The fact that they have to go back to high school where everybody was at one time immature and was playing around with alcohol and having a beer here or there when they were not old enough to be able to metabolize it and stay sober.
Right.
We've all done this. It's all part of growing up. And to now claim that an incident that the victim claims to not even be able to remember enough significant details can derail not just a nomination to the Supreme Court, but a life and a career. It's obscene. It is absurd. And all it takes is a single letter to a United States senator to get this done. You're absolutely right. This is injustice on steroids.
It is. They're libeling the man. It just relates to, we just so happen to be in the Me Too era, and now they're claiming he's a Me Too guy. I mean, just because there's a lot of examples of people out there doing bad things doesn't mean that he has. They've got nothing on him. He's a tour de force. This is just totally unjust. And, a lot of us who worked with him are just kind of texting each other, just saying, what can we do? And I just thought, I'm just going to pick up the phone, and I just want to thank you for supporting him, and I just want to encourage everyone out there to be upset about this, because this is just totally, totally wrong.
Well, while I've got you, I've got 1 minute. What do you think of this circus that they've scheduled in the Senate for Monday? I mean, how can that possibly become anything but a circus?
I don't see how it can be anything other than a circus. I mean, some of the original hearing was a circus, and he was, I couldn't believe how, I can because I've seen it, but 13, 14 hours into each day, he literally is citing footnote 9 of the Chevron decision, at the end of the third day of the hearing without even looking down. I mean, the guy's incredible. And now they're going to trot him there on Monday. Maybe she'll show up, maybe she won't, and he's going to have to, it's indignity. I mean, to have to sit there and say,
total.
It's just horrible.
Total indignity. It is. That's the word for this. It is indignity. It is undignified for practically everybody involved. And he's willing, however, to go through it in order to see all of this through. Look, I appreciate the call, David. Thank you. Hi, welcome back. There is a development, and I don't know what I think about this. I had my gut reaction to it, and then I backed off, and I started thinking about it. It's a tweet from Senator Susan Collins. Susan Collins is from Maine. She is buddy-buddy with Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, two Republican senators who are constantly thought to be on the bubble. And whenever there is a judicial nominee for any position, but especially the Supreme Court, if there is any, it is said that if there is any, the slightest indication that that nominee might not be thinking the right way on abortion, then Susan Collins and Murkowski will vote with Democrats to kill the nomination. And because of this, the Democrats are constantly applying pressure to both of them, and they have been working overtime to try to pressure Susan Collins to commit to voting against Kavanaugh because of their claims that he would reverse Roe versus Wade and all that paranoia that the Democrats have. And she resisted. So the next thing they did, they created a GoFundMe campaign for a phantom candidate to oppose her in the Senate campaign from Maine. And that GoFundMe campaign, or however they funded it, reached $1 million. They were trying to blackmail her. They were telling her, if you will commit to voting against Kavanaugh, then we'll pull this money out of the race against you, and we will not assist a candidate who opposes you. And she didn't buck to that. And so when that failed, they sent her, and I'm not making this up, and I'm sorry I have to tell you, but they sent her a 3-foot cardboard cutout of male genitalia in another attempt to, I don't know what, bully her or offend her. And she said, this is it. I've had enough of this. I've had enough of these anti-Kavanaugh tactics. So that's Susan Collins, and she has been, as I say, target for much bullying and manipulation by the left. So she sent a tweet out a little over an hour ago. Her tweet says, I'm writing to the chairman and ranking member of the Judiciary Committee. That would be Grassley and Feinstein. I'm writing to the chairman and ranking member of the Judiciary Committee respectfully recommending that at Monday's hearing, lawyers for Professor Ford be allocated time to question Judge Kavanaugh, and lawyers for Judge Kavanaugh be granted equal time to question Professor Ford, followed by questions from senators. My first reaction when I saw that was, why don't we just cash in the chips now and say the country as we knew it is over? We're now officially the Jerry Springer show in the United States Senate. Or take your pick. Whatever daytime soap opera fare that people watch. Are we serious about this? That lawyers for Professor Ford be allowed time to question Kavanaugh, and that his lawyers be allowed time to question her. By the way, she still has not responded to the invitation to show up to this thing on Monday. I think they ought to bag this and just do the vote on Thursday. To hell with it. Just bag it and do it. But they won't because they're afraid of losing it now. But that doesn't matter. The committee vote doesn't matter. Mitch McConnell can schedule a full Senate vote on this nominee without the committee voting. Just Senate, protocol that the Judiciary Committee has a vote, and then that's supposed to inform the rest of the Senate that it's okay to vote for the guy or that they shouldn't. I mean, that's how silly it is. The Judiciary Committee vote's not going to determine how people in the general population of the Senate vote, but we're actually, because somebody sent a letter to Dianne Feinstein, we're going to do all that. We're going to have a circus on Monday, and Code Pink and every leftist protest group's going to be in there. If you remember the embarrassment that happened during the confirmation hearings for 4 days, Kavanaugh's parents with their heads in their hands in a moment that any other time in American history would be one of the proudest, most glorious days for an American family, that one of their children had succeeded and achieved in life to the point of being nominated to be an associate justice on the United States Supreme Court, and it was turned into circus is not even the right way to describe what they did, with the Democrats' acquiescence and letting it happen, I am certain. What should have been a moment of great pride and overwhelming love and excitement was turned into a despicable, embarrassing spectacle that was beneath all of the decency this country is known for. And it was by design. If they allowed that to happen during confirmation hearings, can you imagine what this thing on Monday would become? So lawyers interrogate her, then other lawyers interrogate him. This man is a nominee to be on the United States Supreme Court, an allegation that her lawyers say she doesn't even have to prove. And then after all that, blowhard senators get their turn asking questions. Dianne Feinstein, Chuck Schumer, Dick Durbin. Susan Collins then tweeted, such an approach would provide more continuity. It would elicit the most information and allow an in-depth examination of the allegations. That is just, folks, whatever it is a gigantic come down. At any rate, all this notwithstanding, her tweet probably will send the Democrats into orbit with rage, because they were counting on flipping her. They were counting on her saying before this even began, she's had enough. This is the last straw. I can't support the guy. Look at what's being said. I can't possibly, but that's what they were hoping Collins would say. Now she wants to see a circus. Kavanaugh's lawyer, he's hired a lawyer, I should tell you this. Brett Kavanaugh's hired Beth Wilkinson. Does the name ring a bell? Does anybody know who Beth Wilkinson is? A, she's the wife of David Gregory of CNN/NBC. B, she represented Hillary Clinton's staffers during the FBI investigation into Clinton's private server. Those staffers were Cheryl Mills, Jake Sullivan, Heather Samuelson, and Philippe Rains. She's also said to be a stellar warrior, and apparently one of her specialties is defamation. Attacking and defending defamation, which is exactly what this is. This is an upfront attempt to defame and destroy Brett Kavanaugh. I was saying yesterday, we oppose some of the nominees the Democrats put forward. When's the last time you remember anybody on our side trying to literally destroy the life and career and reputation of a political opponent? Any more so than they already had? I mean, with Bill Clinton, there was evidence. He did it. Nothing was made up. And all those people defending Bill Clinton, saying it doesn't matter, it's just sex. Hillary Clinton and all these other people responsible for trashing these women that came forward are now the same people claiming that Kavanaugh is scum and that this woman, who's never said a word about any of this for 36 years, is eminently believable. Have to take another break, and I promise we'll come back and resume with phones because a lot of people want to weigh in. Back after this, folks.
The wonder of Rush.
Back to email. Many of you are very concerned. Let me read a sample email. Dear Mr. Limbaugh, when you just said we've all done this since high school, so forth and so on, you better clarify what you mean. I know you were talking about underage drinking and playing spin the bottle and playing around. And yeah, but you didn't mean that we've all held girls down against their will like this. Of course not, because I don't believe that happened. That's the whole point here. If we're just supposed to believe what she says because she said it and she didn't have to corroborate it, well, I'm going to choose to believe Kavanaugh, folks, that it didn't happen, that he doesn't remember it happening, that he thinks it's a case of mistaken identity. I don't believe it happened. That's what's driving me on this. Of course, I do not mean to say that everybody that I knew in high school practiced habitually holding women down, trying to kiss them in high school. I don't believe that happened. I was not even referring to that. I'm talking about what happens when high school kids and even junior high, I don't care today or back then, had parties. We all remember the things, the hormonal rages, the coming of age. But I don't believe the allegation. So I'm not even talking about that. I don't believe it's what happened. Maybe, I got another email. Rush, have you stopped to think that maybe this woman really liked Kavanaugh and felt rebuffed? And she's simply taking all this time to get back at him for rejecting her? Well, gee, how can we possibly know any of this? And if she doesn't have to corroborate any of it, then she can allege anything. And we're supposed to accept it and try to disprove what she's saying, and then she will not accept the invitation to come talk about it. Now, I don't even think that I have to make this clarification because this is my point. None of you would believe that I would come here and admit to engaging in behavior such as that charged by this woman. But we all in high school did things. We drank when we shouldn't. We snuck around our parents. This is part of growing up. And I'm talking about the innocent kind. Don't anybody confuse things here. Kavanaugh didn't do what she's alleging. That's what I choose to believe. Using intelligence guided by experience, by the way. Let me ask this. Why is it not controversial to believe what she says, but very controversial to believe his denial? Because that's what I choose to believe here. And if nobody has to prove it, then what is the point? Well, I take it back. He has to prove that it didn't happen. Do you realize how impossible that is? That's why our criminal justice system does not require that the accused prove it didn't happen. You accuse, you allege, you have to prove it, or you're gone. Now, in the real world, as I pointed out, in court a strategy might be, because juries are juries. Your lawyer might say, we're going to have to find out who really did this, and we're going to have to prove they did it as a means of getting your innocence. Even though they don't have a case other than beyond circumstantial, we may still have to do it because the way juries are affected by prosecutors. I understand all that, but the rule of law, the accused has to prove. And for them to come out and say that she doesn't have to corroborate anything, fine. I'm going to choose to accept, Kavanaugh, that this didn't happen, because that's not what decent people do. Pure and simple. All right, back to the phones. Ashley in West Palm Beach. Great to have you with us. I'm glad you waited.
Hi, Mega Jacob. I've been listening to you since 1998.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay. I have a question to the feminazis that are out there. I would like them to answer to me and other women who may have been victims of anything related to this. What kind of damage are you doing to the American women in general by bringing up an accusation that you cannot prove, that is most likely completely bogus? The American people can smell BS a mile away. They're good-natured and fair-minded people. And this smells to the high heavens, first of all. And second of all, it is a huge disservice to actual victims. They will never be believed. And this will go on and on and on unless this Congressional Senate puts a stop to it. I agree with you that they need to vote on Thursday. And I would bet, I don't have a lot of money, but I would bet this woman will not show up, because the world is watching and she's weighing her options, trying to figure out how she can come across as believable when she's probably lying. And the actual people in this country who will never come forward with their stories are being done a great disservice by someone like Dianne Feinstein and the entire Democratic Party. And I'm infuriated.
You're right. And by the way, this is not the first time. There have been similar examples involving race. This one happens to involve sex. But there have been numerous efforts the Democrats have made which have actually resulted in real victims not being believed when they've come forward because of the circus that attached itself to something that was bogus like this. So you don't believe this woman?
Not at all. And I am a woman, and I did have a similar experience to her allegation in high school. And being that I was somewhat drunk as a teen, and I shouldn't have been, I don't actually have a very good memory. But I am the exception, not the rule. And I can't believe this woman, based on her background. Because you have to put into perspective that she does wear a vagina on her head. She is an activist. You have to put all of that in perspective. You have to put in the fact that Dianne Feinstein knew about this apparently 6 weeks ago and didn't say anything. In closed sessions, didn't say anything. They are using this because they will use anything. They will do anything to destroy anyone that Trump puts forward. If they get rid of Kavanaugh and he puts up somebody else, they will use somebody else to come up in the last hour to accuse that person. And honestly, I think that they want to use this for the midterms. I think they want to make this the reason why get out the vote. Because if they can get out the vote and generate their liberal activists to come out and vote, we need a better Supreme Court justice, then we would.
I think they're running the risk of a backfire in terms of getting out the vote. If you're right, you said the average American is repulsed by this and can see what's going. If you're right about that, then this is not good for the Democrats and their midterm desires and expectations. Look, Ashley, great call. I'm glad you made it through. We'll be back in a minute. Greetings and welcome back. Great to have you. Rush Limbaugh executing assigned, host duties flawlessly, zero mistakes. And the fastest 3 hours in media roll on. Telephone number 800-282-2882 and the email address lrushbo@eibnet.com. Let me see one thing. Right on. Right on. All right. Now, I said we're going to move on to other things, and we are, but I just some audio sound bites here as we wrap up our detailed conversation today on the Kavanaugh smear by the Democrat Party. By the way, while this is going on, I have to mention, and I don't think this is being used as a distraction. I don't want anybody to miss it because this is real. I mean, the Democrats are trying to destroy Kavanaugh. They're trying to keep him off the court. This is real. But while this is going on, you know what else is happening? In the Senate just authorized the biggest and fastest spending bill in the history of spending bills. United States government's collecting record tax revenue. We've had Republicans running for office for years claiming to want to get control of spending. It's why the Tea Party came into existence in part in 2010. There's not even any pretense now. And look, this was scheduled to happen. The vote was scheduled to happen regardless of what happened with Kavanaugh. But the Kavanaugh story is so obscuring everything else that for the big spenders, I mean, this is a godsend. They're able to go in and vote on this stuff. Nobody even paying attention or cares. And once it's over, tiny little reporting on it, precious little. But I wanted to pass that on to you nevertheless, because there are things continuing to happen while everything, like Trump has declassified some of the FISA documents. That doesn't mean they're going to be made public right away. Declassifying doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be public. At some point they will. So we're tracking that as well. But just a few sound bites here to wrap up our exclusive coverage of the Kavanaugh smear. And last night, the Fox News Channel, you know, the 65 women who have known Kavanaugh signed a letter claiming that he is a prince of a guy, perfectly fine, decent person, that this allegation is something they cannot possibly imagine. That 65 has now swelled to 200 women who've signed that letter. That's I don't know how many of you guys out there know 200 women, period. Especially if you're married and all of a sudden 200 women pop up and say they know you well enough to vouch for your character. Then just 200 women, period, vouching for who can say this. No, I believe it. Don't misunderstand. I believe everything. I believe Kavanaugh. I do not believe the woman. I'm just saying this is astounding. And they're claiming they don't have to corroborate whatever it is they're charging. We've got all of these people who personally know Kavanaugh saying it can't possibly be true. They have no experience with him. Two of them appeared on Fox News last night. And one of the questions, their names are, Mara Kane and Mara Fitzgerald, I believe here. And Mara Fitzgerald is first. One of the questions is going to be whether or not he was somebody who drank heavily in high school, who could have potentially blacked out during this experience and yet had committed this act but doesn't remember it. Mara Fitzgerald, is that a possibility?
No, and all of the times, all the years that I've known Brett, even if we had a beer, he was always in complete control. And he was actually one of the guys that if we were at a social gathering, he'd be the guy to look out for other people. He was always in control. Always
in control. So he was a designated driver type of guy. Here is Mara Kane being asked if she ever saw Kavanaugh drunk, falling down, sloppy all over himself.
We drank beer. It was legal. I never saw him out of control, drunk. He always retained his composure. He was a responsible guy. He was someone who did have a beer, but he was never out of control. He never became someone different after drinking.
Well, two people, never out of control. You know people like that, don't you? I do. I have. And I was kind of, in high school, I was kind of impressed by the 15 or 16-year-old who was already plotting his entire life and guarding his reputation even then. I mean, a lot of people don't start taking that stuff seriously to get to college or afterwards. He may have been one of these people who was taking seriously his life and the establishment of a reputation because he knew what he wanted to do. And it could be this is his general personality. So the next question, you both dated him. Most people do date several people going through high school and college. Maura Fitzgerald, was he ever physically aggressive to you? What was he like as a boyfriend?
He was nothing but kind and polite and respectful. I've known him since high school. I dated him briefly in college, and we've remained close friends ever since. I cherish his friendship. He has just been such a stand-up guy, full of integrity. I admire him. He never exhibited to me or anyone else that I know, treated no one with disrespect.
So in this sordid tale, we have a woman who doesn't remember where it happened, or maybe even who, not sure of the year, sends a letter to Dianne Feinstein saying, I don't want to go public, I don't want anybody to know who I am, and I don't want you pursuing this, but I think I remember this guy falling all over me, blah, 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 blah. When this surfaces, and the Democrats have run out of options, this surfaces, I don't know, is there anybody coming forward with knowledge of this woman and vouching for her? I don't know. I'm asking. Has anybody seen this? Oh, no, Russia doesn't want to come forward. By the way, the Republican Senate caucus is meeting as we speak to decide what to do if the woman does not accept the invitation to show up to the circus on Monday. They're deciding what to do. You got to be real careful here. They've got to give her a timeline to accept. They got to tell her by, sundown tomorrow, you got to tell us whether you're coming or not. Because if you're not, we're going to do the vote. They can't just let her keep the issue open. United States Senate doesn't or shouldn't be manipulated this way. And it's up to the senators to make sure that it isn't. Anyway, we got all kinds of people vouching for Kavanaugh. It seems effortless. It seems people can't wait to come out and speak up and vouch for the guy. So now we move on to the drive-by media. And up next is A.B. Stoddard. She was on the special report with Brett Baer show last night. And she was on the all-star panel. And Brett Baer said, okay, the woman is, the accuser here is a registered Democrat. She's donated to political causes and progressive candidates. A.B., this does not mean this is strictly motivated by politics. The accusations are one thing. How it was dealt with is another.
The idea that some left-wing grassroots, some motivated person would ruin their life over this to try to take the Kavanaugh nomination down is crazy. The reporting backs up what her lawyer said, that she didn't intend to come forward and was outed.
Okay, so the idea that some left-wing grassroots motivated person would ruin their life over this to try to take the Kavanaugh nomination, that's crazy. No, A.B., it's not. It is, in fact, par for the course. It is, in fact, what left-wing activists do. Her life will not be ruined. She will become an instant hero to the left, whether she succeeds in keeping Kavanaugh off the court or not. Take a look at Anita Hill. She was hired as the provost at this university and at that university, and she's constantly asked to speak. She is considered an expert on sexual harassment. Now, there have been books written about her virtue. There have been movies made about her virtue. Even to this day, Anita Hill is celebrated by the left for her valiant effort to destroy Clarence Thomas. This woman would not suffer any indignities, but the idea that left-wing activists would not do this is exactly what left-wing activists do. We're witnessing it. The idea that a left-wing activist wouldn't do this while a left-wing activist is doing it is comical. No, that person's not speeding as they go by you at 100 miles an hour. The idea that a left-wing activist would try to take down Brett Kavanaugh like this, it's crazy, while we're watching it happen. So we're not only not supposed to believe what we see, we are supposed to believe what we can't prove. But we are to deny what we see. It's an amazing set of standards. Up next, F. Chuck Todd, who was on the Today Show today, the co-host Hoda Kotb, said, "Tell us about the Kavanaugh nomination, F. Chuck. Is it in trouble?"
I definitely think it's in trouble. Nothing would surprise me, including him by the end of the week, if Judge Kavanaugh decides he doesn't want to go through this. It isn't worth it. He doesn't want to, maybe he can win, but he doesn't want an asterisk. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he chose to withdraw and chose to back down. I think a lot, frankly, will have to do with what more do we learn this week? Is there anybody else from their high school days that come out? I think if any little thing that we don't know now comes out before that hearing on Monday, I don't think the hearing happens.
So while the accuser has yet to accept the invitation to show up Monday and appear at a circus hearing or whatever, F. Chuck Todd is asking somebody else to come forward. A little dog whistle here, folks. When F. Chuck Todd says, "It wouldn't surprise me if he chose to withdraw," I think a lot, frankly, will have to do with what more do we learn this week. Is there anybody else from their high school days that could come out? In other words, F. Chuck Todd saying, "We're waiting. We're willing to help you. Is there any other woman in high school that this guy Kavanaugh bullied in similar fashion? We're waiting for you." Some might even say that that is a signal that somebody else is going to show up, that F. Chuck Todd wouldn't put that out there unless he knew somebody was going to come out. I don't know about that. I maybe don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're asking, because that's what let me tell you right now, the media is hoping that the woman has an assist and another woman comes forward some other period in Kavanaugh's life. What would your reaction be if that happened? You got to be on the lookout for it, folks. Now that F. Chuck Todd has, waved the little red flag up there. I mean, the message has gone out. We can get this guy to quit if there's another one of you. Is there anybody out there? If there is anybody out there, anybody else from their high school days to come out? And the Savannah Guthrie then asked F. Chuck Todd, "Look, just the specter of a public hearing, Chuck. We've seen this before. Anita Hill, Clarence Thomas, a generation ago. What a high-wire act for both parties."
This one is actually in an election year. I remember that. I was here in Washington for that. And that wasn't an election year. It was the beginning of a presidential campaign. And it seemed to divide not just this town, but this country. This one, because we're so close to an election, because of the Donald Trump era, this one feels like a tinderbox. It feels like 4 sticks of dynamite wrapped in radioactive material. It just feels like either side could see this erupt a culture war that defines the rest of the midterm election, the next 6 weeks, in a way that could totally scramble what the outcomes could be.
Well, so F. Chuck signals what he's hoping for out there, what he's expecting. They want a nuclear explosion out of all this. They're not satisfied yet. Kavanaugh hasn't withdrawn, which is what this is all about. We got to take another brief time out, my friends. I promise we'll get back to your phones and deal with some of the other items in the news. On loan from God. You have to say God. I think talent on loan from God just doesn't. Oomph. Okay, back to the phones. Kansas City, Missouri. This is Katie. Welcome to the EIB Network. Hi.
Thank you, Rush. I'm so honored to be on with you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad you're here.
Well, I was calling today to just tell you a funny story. So I've been listening to with my kids. They are 10 and 8 to your books. We've been doing audiobooks.
Oh.
And they really enjoy your voice. My daughter has said several times, "Oh, I just love his voice. It's so much more interesting than any other audiobooks we listen to." And so one day I was in the kitchen making lunch while they were off playing with their friends, and I was listening to you, during the day, just to your radio show. And my son came in for lunch, and he goes, "Mom, why are you listening to our book without us?" And he was really mad because he recognized your voice, and he thought I was secretly listening to the Rush Revere books without them.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate that. That's